The golden glow of dawn spread over the hills of Salem, touching the high stone walls with the soft kiss of morning light. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh earth and the distant sound of traders arriving at the city gates. Inside the palace, the halls were filled with the gentle hum of priests preparing for the morning offering, their voices blending into a sacred harmony. Melchizedek stood at the high window of his chamber, gazing out over his city, a city of peace, a city of righteousness. His people moved about their daily tasks with joy, for they knew they were under the rule of a king who did not seek war nor thirst for power. As he stood in the quiet of the morning, a knock sounded at his chamber door. "Enter," he said, turning. A young servant stepped inside, his expression filled with urgency. "My lord, a group of travelers approaches the city. Their garments are torn from battle, and they bear news." Melchizedek's brow furrowed. He had heard whispers of conflict brewing between the great kings of the land. He had no love for war, yet he understood that power-hungry rulers would always seek to conquer. But why had these men come to Salem? "Who leads them?" he asked. "They say he is Abram, a man from the land of Ur." The name stirred something within Melchizedek. He had heard of Abram, a man who had left his homeland following the voice of an unseen God, a man whose faith was said to be unshakable. Melchizedek took a deep breath, then nodded. "Bring them to me." The servant bowed and hurried from the room. Melchizedek turned back to the window, watching as the travelers neared the gates. Their numbers were small, but their presence was strong. These were men who had fought for something greater than gold or land. Minutes later, the doors of the hall opened and Abram stepped forward. His face was lined with dust, his robes worn from travel, but his eyes burned with determination. "King of Salem," he greeted, bowing his head. Melchizedek stepped down from the high seat, approaching him with open arms. "Abram of Ur," he said warmly. "You are welcome in my city. Come, sit, and tell me of your journey." Abram nodded, gratitude in his eyes. The servants brought fresh bread and wine, setting them before the men. The air was thick with unspoken words, but Melchizedek did not rush. He was a man who understood the value of patience. Finally, Abram spoke. Melchizedek listened carefully. Abram was no king. He did not rule a nation, nor did he seek power, and yet he fought not for his own gain, but for justice. There was something different about this man, something familiar. "Blessed be Abram of God Most High," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "For it is he who has delivered your enemies into your hands." Abram looked up, his eyes shining with understanding. He had heard of Salem. He had heard whispers of a city where the Most High was worshipped, not idols, not false gods, but the same unseen Creator who had called him from Ur. Slowly he reached into his pouch and pulled out a portion of his spoils, laying them at Melchizedek's feet. "A tenth I give to you, O priest of the Most High," Abram said, "for you are a servant of the same God I follow." Melchizedek's heart swelled with joy. In a world ruled by men of war and greed, here stood a man of faith, two servants of the Most High, their paths crossing in a moment that would be remembered for generations. Melchizedek lifted his hands to the heavens. "Blessed be the Most High God, creator of heaven and earth, for he raises up the righteous and grants victory to the faithful." The hall was filled with the sound of prayer, of thanksgiving, of a sacred bond between two men who had chosen to follow the one true God. As the sun rose higher in the sky, Melchizedek knew this meeting was not by chance. Something eternal, and his role in the story of the Most High was only beginning. The city of Salem bustled with the quiet hum of life, its people moving about their daily tasks under the warm gaze of the sun. Merchants arranged their goods in the marketplace. Shepherds guided their flocks beyond the city walls, and children ran laughing through the narrow streets. Yet, in the great hall of the king, a meeting of far greater significance was taking place. Melchizedek sat across from Abram, the flickering torches casting golden light over their faces. The air was thick with the scent of fresh bread and wine, and though neither man had spoken for several moments, there was a sense of understanding between them, two men drawn together by something far greater than coincidence. Abram's eyes held a quiet fire, the look of a man who had seen much, fought much, and yet remained steady. Melchizedek admired that. Faith was not a thing of words alone, it was a thing of action. "Tell me, Abram," Melchizedek said finally, breaking the silence, "what made you leave your home? What made you follow a voice no one else could hear?" Abram exhaled slowly, setting down his goblet. "The Most High called me from he said, his voice filled with conviction. He said, 'Go from your country and your father's house to the land I will show you.' And though I did not know where he was leading me, I followed." Melchizedek nodded, his heart swelling with recognition. "He called me too long ago," he said softly. "You also heard his voice?" Melchizedek smiled. "I was born into a world of many gods," he explained, "but none could satisfy the questions in my soul. I looked to the sun, to the moon, to the stars, and I knew these were not gods, they were creations. If they were made, then there must be a maker." Abram leaned forward, listening intently. "One night," Melchizedek continued, "I went to the high place of Salem and I prayed, not to the gods of men, but to the Creator, the one who was greater than all, and he answered me, not with thunder or fire, but with peace." Abram nodded, a slow smile forming on his lips. "You have walked the same road," he murmured. Melchizedek chuckled. "Perhaps the road is not ours alone. Perhaps others will come after us, following the same voice, trusting in the same unseen God." Abram's expression turned thoughtful. "He promised me something," he admitted, "that my descendants would be as numerous as the stars, that through my seed all nations would be blessed." Melchizedek's eyes glowed with understanding. "Then you carry more than just a sword, Abram. You carry a covenant." A hush settled over the room as the weight of those words took hold. A covenant, a divine promise, sealed not by man, but by the Creator himself. "I have no son," Abram confessed, "but I believe he will provide." "Then let us share a meal in his name," he said, "for if the Most High has spoken, his words will not fail." Two men from different places, drawn together by the same God, a king of righteousness, a man of faith. And though neither of them knew it, their meeting would echo through history, pointing toward something even greater to come. This was a foreshadowing, a glimpse of a day when another priest king would come, one greater than Melchizedek, one who would offer not just bread and wine, but his very life. And as the sun set over Salem, casting long golden shadows across the land, Melchizedek knew The story of the Most High was still unfolding. The evening breeze carried the scent of burning incense through the halls of Salem, a gentle reminder that the city belonged not to men, but to the Most High. The flickering torches cast dancing shadows against the smooth stone walls, and in the great hall, Melchizedek and Abram sat together, speaking not as strangers, but as men bound by the same unseen hand of destiny. Melchizedek observed Abram with quiet admiration. Few men in this world truly trusted the Most High the way he did. Kings relied on their armies, rulers on their wealth, priests on their rituals. But Abram had chosen to place his faith in a promise, in words whispered from the heavens, with no proof but the certainty in his own soul. "Tell me, Abram," Melchizedek said, breaking the comfortable silence. "When you stood before the kings you defeated, why did you not take the riches they offered?" "Because it was not for me to take," he said simply. "If I grow rich, it will be because the Most High has blessed me, not because a king of this land has filled my hands with gold." Melchizedek nodded slowly. "You do not wish to be indebted to men." "No," Abram agreed, "only to my God." Melchizedek chuckled. "Then you are unlike most rulers I have met." Abram smiled. "Perhaps because I am no ruler. I hold no throne. I have no land to call my own. I am only a man who believes." Melchizedek studied him for a long moment. "Then you are greater than any king, Abram." The two men sat in silence for a while, the weight of their words settling between them. Finally, Melchizedek rose to his feet. "Stand, Abram." Abram obeyed, rising as Melchizedek lifted his hands toward the heavens. "Blessed be Abram of the Most High God," Melchizedek declared, his voice filling the hall, "the one who possesses heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hands." Abram bowed his head, his spirit stirred by the words. In that moment, it became clear. The battle he had fought, the victory he had won, was not his alone. It was the work of the Most High, the proof of his faithfulness. Abram lifted his gaze, and without hesitation, he reached for the pouch at his waist. He removed 1/10 of all he had recovered, the finest gold, the rarest spices, the most valuable goods, and placed them at Melchizedek's feet. "A tithe to the priest of the Most High," Abram said, "for all that I have belongs to him." Melchizedek felt a warmth in his heart. This was no ordinary man. This was a man destined for something greater. "Go in peace, servant of the Most High. Your name will not be forgotten." As Abram departed from the hall, stepping into the cool night air, Melchizedek remained behind, gazing into the heavens. He had seen something rare that night. A man after God's heart, a man who would shape generations. And though their meeting was brief, it would echo for centuries to come. The story was still being written, and Melchizedek knew this was only the beginning. The stars glittered above Salem like scattered jewels across an endless sea of darkness. Melchizedek stood at the high terrace of his palace, watching the figure of Abram and his company disappear into the night. The torches at the city gates burned low, their flickering light casting long shadows against the walls. The air carried a crisp chill, but Melchizedek barely noticed. His mind was still fixed on their meeting. Abram was different. Unlike the kings who sought only wealth and power, unlike the rulers who bent their knees to idols, he followed a voice that only he could hear, trusting in a promise that had not yet been fulfilled. Melchizedek closed his eyes, lifting his hands to the heavens. The wind stirred around him, rustling the fabric of his robes. A deep peace settled over his spirit. Something greater was coming. A kingdom not built on war or wealth. A king not raised by human hands. The Most High had given Abram a promise that through his descendants all nations would be blessed. But Melchizedek sensed that this promise stretched beyond just one family. It was something eternal. The sound of soft footsteps broke his thoughts. He turned to see one of his trusted elders approaching. "My lord," the man said, bowing slightly, "you have given honor to Abram, yet he is not a king. Why do you hold him in such regard?" Melchizedek smiled. "Because he carries something far greater than a kingdom," he said. "He carries faith." The elder frowned slightly, as if searching for understanding. "You speak as though he is set apart." "He is," Melchizedek said, his voice steady, "and his story is only beginning." The elder hesitated before speaking again. "But what of Salem, my lord? What of our own people? If the Most High is raising another nation, where do we stand?" Melchizedek turned back to the night sky, his expression unreadable. "The Most High does not abandon his own," he said. "He weaves all things together for his purpose. We are but a thread in his great design." The elder nodded slowly, though his eyes still held questions. "Then we wait?" he asked. Melchizedek let out a quiet chuckle. "We do not wait. We continue to serve, to worship, to lead our people in righteousness. But one day, we will see the fulfillment of what has been promised." The elder bowed and stepped away, leaving Melchizedek alone once more. He took a deep breath, his gaze still locked on the heavens. He did not know when, he did not know how, and the Most High would bring his promise to pass. The golden hues of dawn stretched over the city of Salem, painting the stone walls with soft light. The city was waking, merchants setting up their stalls, priests tending to the sacred fires, and farmers bringing in fresh grain from the fields. It was a morning like any other, yet in the great hall of the king, Melchizedek's thoughts were far beyond the city gates. He sat in quiet reflection, the echoes of his meeting with Abram still fresh in his mind. That night had stirred something within him, a knowing that could not be ignored. Salem had always been a city of peace, a place where the Most High was honored. Yet Melchizedek felt deep within him that something far greater was unfolding, something beyond kings and thrones, beyond gold and conquests. The promise Abram carried was no ordinary one. It was not just for his family or his people, it was for the world. One of the elders stepped inside, bowing respectfully. "My lord, a caravan from the east has arrived. They seek the blessing of the priest King of Salem." Melchizedek nodded, rising to his feet. "Then we will receive them with honor." The elder hesitated. "My lord, they bring gifts. They say they have heard of your wisdom, that your name is spoken of even in the lands beyond the great rivers. They wish to learn from you." Melchizedek let out a quiet breath. "It is not my name they seek," he said, "but the name of the Most High." He followed the elder through the stone corridors, stepping out into the warm morning air. In the courtyard, the travelers stood beside their camels, dressed in flowing robes, their faces worn from the long journey. Their leader, an older man with a silver beard, stepped forward, bowing low. "King of Salem, priest of the Most High," he greeted, "we have come from the distant lands, where many gods are worshipped, but none answer." We have heard that here, in this city, there is one who is greater than all. Tell us of him." Melchizedek studied the man's face, seeing the hunger for truth in his eyes. This was no chance meeting. "Come," Melchizedek said, gesturing toward the hall. "Let us share bread, and I will tell you of the one who made the heavens and the earth." As they walked together, he felt a deep assurance settle in his heart. The Most High was calling many to himself, and this was only the beginning. The great hall of Salem was filled with the quiet murmurs of conversation as the travelers from the east settled onto the woven rugs laid out before them. The scent of burning incense drifted through the air, mingling with the warm aroma of freshly baked bread and the deep richness of the wine being poured into goblets. Melchizedek, seated at the head of the gathering, watched the faces of the men before him. They had traveled far, seeking wisdom, searching for something more than the lifeless idols that lined the temples of their homeland. They had come in search of truth, and he would not withhold it from them. "Tell us, O priest king," the silver-bearded man said, leaning forward slightly. "Who is this God you serve?" "The people of our land bow to many gods, gods of the sun, the river, the harvest, but none of them listen. We bring offerings, we spill the blood of bulls, yet they remain silent. But they say in Salem, there is a Most High God, one who does not need statues or temples to be honored. Tell us, is it true?" Melchizedek lifted his goblet, swirling the deep red wine as he gathered his thoughts. "It is true," he said finally, his voice steady. "There is one who is above all, the creator of the heavens and the earth. He is not carved from stone nor made by human hands. He is not bound to a single place, nor does he slumber like the gods of men. He is the everlasting one, and his power fills all things." The travelers exchanged glances, their curiosity deepening. "Then how does one serve such a God?" another asked. "If he does not need sacrifices, if he is not confined to temples, how does one worship him?" Melchizedek smiled. "Not with gold," he answered. "Not with lifeless offerings. The Most High desires the hearts of men, not their wealth. He desires justice, mercy, righteousness." He gestured toward the table before them, where the bread and wine sat, simple yet sacred. "Come," he said. "Let us break bread together in his name. Let us drink in remembrance of his goodness, for he is the one who provides for us all." The men hesitated for only a moment before reaching forward, taking the bread, lifting their goblets. As they ate and drank, a hush fell over the room, a sense of something greater than themselves settling upon them. Melchizedek closed his eyes briefly. He did not know how many of these men would return home changed, how many would carry the name of the Most High with them into distant lands. But he knew that the truth had been planted in their hearts, and that was enough. As the meal continued, one of the travelers turned to Melchizedek, his expression thoughtful. "You speak as if this God is not only your ruler, but your friend." Melchizedek chuckled softly. "Because he is." The traveler nodded slowly, as if considering something deeper than words could express. The night stretched on, filled with discussion, with laughter, with the warmth of shared understanding. And Melchizedek knew the Most High was at work. Even here, in the breaking of bread and the sharing of wine, a story was being written. A story far greater than any of them could yet understand. The final embers of the sacred fire flickered low as the night deepened over Salem. The travelers, now full with bread and wine, sat in contemplative silence, their minds turning over the words they had heard. The great hall, once filled with the soft murmurs of conversation, had settled into a peaceful stillness. Melchizedek sat at the head of the gathering, his hands folded before him, his gaze steady. He could see it in their eyes. Something had changed. These men who had come seeking wisdom would not leave the same. "Priest King," the silver-bearded man finally spoke, breaking the quiet. "Your words have stirred something within us. We have long searched for truth, yet it was not found in the gods of our fathers, nor in the altars we built with our hands. But here, in this city of peace, we have seen something different. Your God, this Most High, is unlike any we have known." Melchizedek nodded, sensing the weight of the moment. "Because he is not a God of stone or silver," he said. "He is the living one. He is not bound to temples made by men. He does not require grand displays of wealth. He asks for only one thing, your heart." The traveler was silent for a moment before lowering his head in deep thought. "And what of you, O king?" another traveler asked. "You are a ruler of this city, yet you do not seek power. You have no army, yet your people live in safety. You do not fight for land, yet you have more peace than all the kingdoms of the earth. What kind of king are you?" Melchizedek smiled. "I am but a servant," he said simply. "A servant of the Most High." The traveler studied him, intrigued. "But are you not also a priest?" "Yes," Melchizedek affirmed, "and my priesthood is not like the priests of the nations. I do not offer sacrifices of blood, nor burn offerings to gods who do not hear. I stand as a witness of the one who rules all things. I mediate not between men and stone idols, but between men and the true Creator." The travelers exchanged glances, something deep stirring within them. "Then you are both a king and a priest," the silver-bearded man murmured, a look of realization crossing his face. "You are unlike any ruler we have known." Melchizedek's smile grew faint, his eyes distant. "I am but a shadow," he said quietly, "a reflection of what is to come." The men sat in puzzled silence, uncertain of his meaning. "There will come another," Melchizedek continued, his voice steady but sure, "one greater than I, a true king of righteousness, a true high priest of the Most High. He will not rule over a single city, nor mediate for a single nation, but for all people. He will not offer mere bread and wine. He will offer his very life. And in doing so, he will bring peace that no army can break, a kingdom that no enemy can overthrow." The travelers listened with wide eyes, sensing the depth of his words. "When will this king come?" one asked. Melchizedek's gaze lifted to the heavens, his expression unreadable. "In the time appointed by the Most High," he said simply. A heavy silence followed, the weight of his words lingering in the air. Finally, the silver-bearded man rose to his feet and bowed deeply. "You have given us much to ponder, O priest king. We will not forget these words." Melchizedek stood as well, placing a hand over his heart. "Go in peace," he said, "and may the Most High guide your steps." One by one, the travelers bowed in respect before departing from the hall, their figures disappearing into the quiet of the night. Melchizedek watched them go, knowing that the seeds of truth had been planted. They would carry these words far beyond Salem, into lands unknown, into hearts waiting to hear. As the last of them vanished into the darkness, he turned back toward the sacred fire, lifting his hands in prayer. "O Most High, Your plan is beyond my sight, yet I trust in it. You have raised up Abram, and through him you will bring forth your promise. You have shown me a glimpse of what is to come, and though I do not know when or how, I know this: your kingdom shall never fail." The flames flickered in response, as if acknowledging his words. Melchizedek took a deep breath, allowing peace to settle over him. His time as priest-king would not last forever, but the one who was to come, his rule would be eternal. And so with quiet reverence, Melchizedek stepped away from the fire, walking into the night, knowing that the story of the Most High was still being written, and that it would never end, never end.